Hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück bei Gabriel Knight. Wir befinden uns hier im Park Jackson Square und dann will ich doch mal gucken, was passiert, wenn ich dem Maler sein Bild zurückgebe.
It's a technical drawing of St. Louis Cathedral. There's nothing written on the drawing.
This belongs to you, doesn't it?
My drawing? How'd you get it?
Oh, it was a bit of a squeeze, but I hate to see you lose your work. I lost my only copy of a manuscript once.
Well, you saved my butt. Let me know if I can ever do the same for you, huh?
Gabriel has a photocopy of the official police file containing the partial patterns from the Voodoo Murders.
Unvollständig.
Do you mind if I watch you?
Be my guest.
Could I ask you some questions?
I'd rather not. I really get focused when I'm drawing.
Okay, fine. Say, do you think there's anything you can do with these patterns?
What do you need?
Is there any way you can reconstruct the whole pattern from these partials?
The pattern is probably circular, and there's some repetition in the elements. What is this from, anyway?
You'd never believe me.
Okie dokie. Well, there's... I think there's an area missing. If you could get me any more of these...
I'll see what I can do.
Das Teil vom 7. Schauplatz.
I have another one of those patterns.
Really? Let's see. Yeah, this is great. I think there's enough overlap now. I'll give it my best shot. I'll show you what I come up with tomorrow.
Great. I appreciate it.
Morgen. Okay, dann gehen wir erstmal woanders hin. Ich glaube, ich möchte ins Voodoo Museum gehen. Dann können wir vielleicht ein bisschen Informationen sammeln über echten Voodoo und können das abgleichen. Wenn mich die Leute denn hier rauslassen.
Welcome, my friend.
Hello?
I am the proprietor, Dr. John. If you have any questions, I will be happy to assist.
Great. My name is Knight, and I'll probably take you up on that.
Aber erstmal umschauen.
The historical Voodoo Museum is brimming with items authentic and original. It's the exit to Ursula Street. A street drummer has settled outside the museum.
Reminds me of a book critic for the New York Times. He's got more hair than Mosley.
Flickering candles lend an appropriately spooky atmosphere to the museum. It's the exit to Ursula. On the table is a small coffin. So small, in fact, that it would only fit an infant.
Charming.
An official voodoo wish and stump. Rub it and make a wish, a card says.
Funny, I say the same thing to women.
Okay.
I wish Malia Getty was permanently grafted to my thighs.
Okay.
An authentic-looking pole marks the center of the room. Authentic what? Gabriel isn't sure. Gabriel doesn't recognize the museum's flags. A balcony surrounds the room on the second level. It's closed to the public. The historical a wooden doll with horns is on the back table.
Looks like Jack Nicholson.
The back wall displays various voodoo items, such as an artist's rendering of the voodoo dances in Congo Square in the early 1800s. The back wall a bandana that was once worn by a voodoo queen.
Nice bloodstains.
The back wall an artist's the back a poster advertising a voodoo tour of the city. Winters only. Something about the shape of that knife gives Gabriel the creeps.
Wahrscheinlich wellenförmig, nehme ich mal an.
The back wall displays various voodoo items, such as an anatomically correct voodoo doll with pins strategically placed.
Now why does that remind me of Grace?
The historic the back wall a gaudy shell necklace. The historic a striking portrait of a turbaned woman is on the back wall. Gabriel wonders who she might be. Large, elaborate drums occupy a corner of the museum. A beaded gourd is on display. A counter at the back displays brochures and a donation basket. It's a basket for donation to the Free Museum. Dr. John is a huge man. If his manner weren't so pleasant, he'd be intimidating. A very large, very formidable-looking snake is secured in a plexiglass cage.
This is quite a place you have here.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. I have dedicated myself to the preservation of this unique culture. It is gratifying to see others reap the fruits I have sown.
Could I ask you some questions?
That is why I am here.
What do you think of New Orleans?
It is the only city in the United States as far as I am concerned.
What is it about New Orleans that you so admire?
It has a real culture of its own, Mr. Knight, amid the horrid blandness that is Americana. New Orleans alone has a voice.
Spoken like a true New Orleanian.
Ja, New Orleans würde ich auch gerne mal besuchen. Ich stelle mir das echt schön vor da. Mit sehr viel Kultur und Historie. Und das Essen.
Do you have anything else to say about New Orleans?
I have already given you my opinion, Mr. Knight.
Tell me about yourself.
Me?
Yes, if you don't mind.
What is it you wish to learn?
Just tell me anything.
I am originally from the West Indies myself, you know.
Really? What brought you to New Orleans?
I was drawn here for personal reasons.
Just tell me anything.
I am a vegetarian.
Really? I can't imagine living without meat.
That must be the hunter in you, Mr. Knight.
Okay. Also ich könnte mir, glaube ich, schon vorstellen, auf Fleisch zu verzichten, aber ich glaube, ich müsste mich erstmal langsam dran gewöhnen. Erstmal vegetarisch und dann vegan. Aber ich glaube, das könnte ich mir schon vorstellen. Man muss halt sich informieren und dann Dinge finden, die man essen kann, dass man nicht irgendwie Nährstoffmangel bekommt oder so. Aber ja, kann ich mir schon vorstellen.
Just tell me anything.
I do not care for small talk, Mr. Knight.
Just tell me anything.
I am not an easy person to get to know. I am a very private man.
Isn't that unusual for someone in the museum business?
Not at all. My displays speak for me.
Just tell me anything.
Not everyone can come see the museum, so I occasionally do public speaking on the subject of historical voodoo.
Anything coming up that I might attend?
No. But then, you have me all to yourself right now, do you not?
Ja, voll interessant.
Just tell me anything.
I am original.
Really? What are your own religious beliefs?
My beliefs are too personal and too complex to discuss with a layman, Mr. Knight.
Das kann ich respektieren, ja.
Why did you open a Voodoo Museum?
The subject has fascinated me all my life, and I wanted to help preserve the cultural heritage it represents.
Do you do anything besides run the museum?
No. The museum does not make me a rich man, but my material needs are simple. I prefer to focus on my one true interest in life.
What kind of background in voodoo do you have?
Let us say that I cut my teeth on it, Mr. Knight. It is in my blood.
Actually, I can't think of a thing.
Then, let us discuss something else.
Do you know anything about snakes?
Ah, you have perhaps noticed the museum's snake, Mr. Knight. They are beautiful creatures, do you not agree? And the tourists seem to associate them with voodoo.
Is the snake yours? Do you use it in your practice of voodoo?
I admire the spirit of the snake, Mr. Knight, but snakes like the museum's can be quite dangerous to handle.
You didn't really answer my question.
I think I did, Mr. Knight.
I'd really like to know more about your snake.
There is really nothing more to say, Mr. Knight.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
It is one of the important ceremonial nights in voodoo.
What else can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I am afraid I do not know the origins of St. John's Eve. I only know that it was a night of ritual long before voodoo came to New Orleans.
What else can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I am afraid I have little else to say about that subject.
Do you have any idea what Cabri sans corps means?
I fear my French is not all it should be, Mr. Knight.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
Historical voodoo? Or the voodoo currently practiced in the city?
Tell me about historical voodoo.
Very well. I will start at the beginning, Mr. Knight, and will go on from there at your prompting.
Sounds good.
As you may know, voodoo is a grassroots religion formed by the mixing together of many different African tribal religions and Anglo religions, such as Catholicism or Protestantism. In other words, it is a religion born of the African slave trade, but African slaves were imported not only by the United States, but also into the West Indies, where the French and Spanish ran plantation islands. Prior to 1803, the New Orleans area was owned by France. The French Creole in those days owned many African slaves. But the Creole did not permit their slaves to gather, giving no chance for voodoo to breed here natively. The Creole also knew enough about the corrupted pagan practices of the West Indies slaves to ban the importing of slaves from that region.
Mhm. Oh, ich finde das so toll, dass man in diesem Spiel so viel lernen kann. Das finde ich richtig cool. Und war die Mutter von Gabriel Knight nicht auch irgendwie ursprünglich aus so einer kreolischen Familie?
So, how did voodoo come to New Orleans?
After the Louisiana Purchase, American legislators relaxed regulations. Slaves were permitted to gather. The Americans also removed the ban on West Indies slaves. Around the same time, a slave revolt occurred in Santo Domingo, what is now Haiti. Between the lifting of the ban and the Haitian revolt, West Indies slaves began pouring into New Orleans. Some of them were free people of color, freed or escaped slaves. Some came with their white owners who were fleeing from the revolt.
What happened when the West Indies slaves got here?
They brought voodoo with them. The native slaves were more than enthusiastic about embracing it. It gave them power, Mr. Knight, if only in the form of a communal bond. Among the first meeting places were the Bayou St. John and the shore of Lake Pontchartrain. The early voodoos were heavy snake worshippers, worshipping the one they called the Great Zombie.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
By 1817, the voodoo activities were beginning to cause fear among the white slave owners. An ordinance was passed to forbid slave gatherings except in designated public areas at designated times. The time was Sunday afternoons and the place Congo Square. The slaves and free people of color gathered to dance simulations of their voodoo dances right in sight of Creole society. Of course, they also continued to meet in private for the real thing.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
There were a variety of kings and queens at first, voodoo priests and priestesses. But from about 1830, a single power emerged. This was a voodoo queen named Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau ruled voodoo in New Orleans for many years.
Ja, sogar ich habe von Marie Laveau gehört. Eine sehr, sehr berühmte und mächtige Frau.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
There were actually two Marie Laveaux, mother and daughter. Most people thought they were the same woman. Her continued youth added to the mystique. The original, the mother, was also known as Widow Paris. It was she that began the empire. When the Widow Paris began to practice, there were many voodooans in the city. By 1830, she was voodoo queen of all New Orleans.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
I've given you as much detail as I can, Mr. Knight. Look around the museum if you desire more information.
Tell me about current voodoo.
Many people think of voodoo in terms of magic spells or gree-gree. That kind of practice is actually called hoodoo, and is only a part of true voodoo. Voodoo, the religion, has a strong following in New Orleans. In fact, it is growing quite rapidly. There are several voodoo churches or temples in the city, and others all across the United States. African Americans see it as a tradition all their own. Whites, and there are many in their religion, are attracted to it because they think it is exotic. I, personally, am more interested in the history of voodoo. Some of the new movements are copying Haitian or even African voodoo. But it is the voodoo of New Orleans that I find so intriguing.
Voodoo ist also eine Religion. Okay.
Tell me more about current voodoo.
There are many voodooians in New Orleans. They often do business selling gree-gree, telling fortunes, providing luck, and occasionally misfortune. Perhaps you would like to meet a voodooan. We refer those who seek a deeper experience with voodoo to a local practitioner, Magentia Moonbeam.
Sure, I'd love to meet her.
She lives on the corner of Orleans and Dauphine. I will call her and tell her you might stop by.
Great, thanks.
Vielen Dank.
Tell me more about current voodoo.
You have tapped my resources. My expertise is really historical. Perhaps Ms. Moonbeam can be of further help.
Is there anything else I should know about hoodoo?
Not if your interest is primarily in voodoo. Hoodoo is of interest to those who study rural folk traditions, but it will not aid you in understanding true voodoo.
Do you know Malia Getty?
Should I?
She referred me to your museum.
Many have read about our museum in the newspapers, Mr. Knight.
That's a good point. Are you sure you don't know Malia Getty?
Quite sure, Mr. Knight.
Is there anything else I should know about hoodoo?
Not if your interest is primarily in voodoo. Hoodoo is...
Na gut, dann werde ich mich erstmal in der Stadt weiter umsehen. Ich könnte zum Beispiel zum Friedhof gehen und meinen Vorfahren Respekt zollen, so wie Großmutter Knight das gesagt hat.
That doesn't... The doorway is already open.
Auf Wiedersehen.
I'll be going.
Goodbye, Mr. Knight.
Saint Louis Cemetery, number 1, is one of the most historic and beautiful places in the French Quarter. A high iron fence with sharp spikes surrounds the cemetery. Vases seem to be a favorite decoration for the dead. New Orleans is famous for its above-ground tombs. The high water table prevents bodies from being interred underground.
Ach so, weil das Grundwasser sonst ja kontaminiert wird und Krankheiten verursachen kann wahrscheinlich.
New Orleans is the name Ross is inscribed on this old tomb. New Orleans is the name. Vases seem to... Food, trinkets, and more unsettling things have been left at Marie Laveau's tomb as offerings from believers.
Das Grabmal gibt's in New Orleans wirklich und da bringen regelmäßig Leute Opfergaben für sie da und ja, denken immer noch an sie.
Food, trinkets. Near the Laveau tomb is a piece of red brick, undoubtedly a cast-off from spiritual graffiti writers. It's a piece of brick. This is the tomb of Marie Laveau, Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. Odd-looking marks adorn the Laveau tomb wall. Food, trinkets, St. Louis. The marks are reddish in color and reminds Gabriel of crosses. They look like they've been here a few days at least. Gabriel can't take anything from the tomb wall that way.
That way.
I want a copy of these strange marks.
A stone angel stands silently before a tomb.
A marble snake. Now that's cheerful. A marble...
New Orleans is famous for it. Gabriel doesn't see a name on this tomb. This old tomb is in a sorry state of disrepair.
There's probably no one left in the family to maintain it.
It's an imposing marble tomb from the last century. Gabriel can barely make out the name. Hamilton. This tomb almost looks like a little house.
But I wouldn't want to live there.
Dann gehen wir mal in den anderen Abschnitt, wo der Friedhofsgärtner hingegangen ist.
This above-ground tomb is only large enough to accommodate one resident. A high iron fence with sharp spikes surrounds the cemetery. Several generations of an old New Orleans family rest here in relative peace. Here and there in the cemetery, straggly plants grow in stone planters. An odd monument highlights one grave site. It looks vaguely reptilian. Vases seem to be. A wrought iron fence surrounds this tomb.
I hope that's to keep people out.
A wrought St. Louis Cemetery. This family tomb bears the inscription, "Rest in peace," and the name Fuller Mill.
Ja, manchmal verewigen sich die Spielemacher ja auf Friedhöfen und Grabsteinen, um so ein bisschen ihre eigenen Namen in das Spiel zu bringen. Vielleicht ja auch hier.
The marker reads, "Mirror planter right."
These are Grand's folks. I never knew them.
A statue of a small child clings to a cross atop the right tomb. If Gabriel wants to address his ancestors, he should choose a specific plaque. The marker reads, "Mirror planter right."
These are Grand's folks. I never knew them.
The marker reads, "Franklin Wright."
These are Grand's folks. I never knew them.
The marker reads, "Harrison Knight."
Granddaddy.
The marker reads, "Harley Wright."
Grand's sister. She died young.
The marker reads, "Margaret Templeton Knight."
My mother.
The marker reads Philip Knight.
Daddy. Miss you, Mom.
It's rather rude to interrogate the dead.
Miss you, Mom. Hey, Daddy. How's it going, Granddaddy? Gran talks a lot about you, Harley. Hi. I'm Rebecca's grandson.
Much as when they were alive, the right elders give no response.
Hi. I'm Rebecca's grandson.
There's nothing on the tomb to operate. The marble and granite tombs are quite heavy.
Ich finde es auf jeden Fall irgendwie schön, dass man mit den Vorfahren irgendwie reden kann.
Most of the plaster has fallen away over the years to reveal walls of red brick. A stone angel leans down to gaze at something unseen. This tomb is smaller than most others in the cemetery.
Kind of a pup tent for the dead.
This old tomb has a sword carved into the stone below the name of the deceased. San Luis Cemetery. With a few exceptions, these tombs are all beginning to look alike. Two enormous vases flank the front of the Getty tomb. The imposing tomb is elaborately labeled Getty.
Da liegt wahrscheinlich auch Malias Mutter mittlerweile.
An angel draped dramatically over a stone plinth marks the entrance to a large tomb. Two heavy, solid marble doors provide an entrance to the tomb. There's a small marble plate near the tomb doors. The plate is locked in position. There's a keyhole on the plate, but Gabriel can't operate that without a key.
Na, den hat bestimmt Malia. Dann möchte ich, glaube ich, erstmal mit dem Friedhofsgärtner sprechen.
An old man tends the cemetery with movements akin to a slow drawl. The old man is apparently doing some cleanup work.
Hello there, got a sec?
Yeah? What can I do for you?
You been working here a long time?
Longer than you been alive, son. I mayhaps be here longer than you'll be alive, for that matter.
You must enjoy the company of dead folks.
Unlike the living, they ain't never given me no reason to dislike 'em none.
Ah, man kann auch mehr als einmal Smalltalk machen. Okay.
How's business today?
About like every day. It's what you call a seller's market.
Kind of a quiet job you've got, isn't it?
Most of the time, yeah. Yeah, they act up some at the full moon, though.
Ja, das glaube ich.
You been working here a long time?
Longer than you...
Mind if I pick your brain a minute?
Go ahead. These folks ain't in no hurry.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
Seem like everybody want to visit New Orleans at least once in their lives, and they love the cemetery tour. I see tourists in here every day of the year.
Ich glaube, wenn ich jemals New Orleans besuchen kann, würde ich, glaube ich, nicht auf den Friedhof gehen. Manche Leute finden Friedhöfe wunderschön, aber ich weiß nicht, ich will einfach die Toten ruhen lassen.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
There's lots of things to see here, but none are as beautiful as the St. Louis Cemetery number 1.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
Hey, if you want to know more, you should ask somebody else.
Tell me about yourself.
My name is Toussaint Gervais. I'm the watchman here at St. Louis number 1.
What exactly do you do here?
Oh, I keep the place tidy, cause, but a big part of my job, too, is looking out for the grievers, you know. People come to pay their respects, and they need looking out for. Sometimes they so grief-bound they don't know what they doing.
Tell me about yourself.
That's about all there is to say.
Tell me something about St. Louis Cemetery number 1.
You know why the dead are buried in tombs and not in the ground, don't you? The water table's too high. Them coffins would float right out of their graves. Them dead would go floating right down into the water. 'Course if it were Mardi Gras, nobody'd even notice.
Tell me something about St. Louis Cemetery number 1.
It's a historical place. People buried in here from the Civil War and back further too. Take a look around, you'll see.
Tell me something about St. Louis Cemetery number 1.
Just look around, You get the feel of the place.
Do you know anything about Marie Laveau?
Sure. She was the voodoo queen of New Orleans. A powerful voodooine and a powerful sorceress. Believers still come to her tomb, you know. They write secret marks on the walls, leaving offerings and things. Then there's the tourists. They come out of curiosity. As a matter of fact, that big Dr. John fella from the Voodoo Museum, he's here at least once today. But Marie Laveau's tomb ain't the only one the believers visit and make markings and leave offerings at.
Dr. John kommt hier jeden Tag her. Okay. Ja, dann gehe ich mal ganz stark davon aus, dass er auch von seiner Religion her dem Voodoo angehört.
What else can you tell me about Marie Laveau?
Her tomb's on all our tours. Even the Baptists come round here to gawk. 'Course, you may not know this, but some of the real serious voodoo types argue that she ain't in this one at all, but down in an unmarked tomb in number 3. It's all the same to me, I say. Save me a lot of cleanup work if she weren't here, if you ask me.
Naja, wenn sie in einem anderen Grab ist, dann könnte man auf jeden Fall dafür sorgen, dass sie und auch ihr Grab nicht irgendwie geschändet werden oder so. Klingt schon irgendwie schlau.
What else can you tell me about Marie Laveau?
Boy, go out and buy a book if you really want to know. I ain't too sure my facts these days nohow.
You said there were other marked tombs?
Yep. I seen bull hearts left on tombs and a nest of vulture feathers, plates of peas and cornmeal, animal parts, human parts even, it looked like. Male parts, if you get my meaning. And this at one of the great family crypts, mind you. Odd how them types just pick a spot and stick to it.
What other tombs get marked? Can you show me?
No, I ain't one for naming names. I don't like to encourage that kind of thing. It's distressing to the families, and rightly so. Don't know how that sort of thing gets started. Why folks come to start leaving stuff at that one spot. But it happens all the same.
Ich denke mal Opfergaben. Oder sowas.
What other tombs get marked?
No, don't.
What's the significance of St. John's Eve?
Why, St. John the Baptist is the patron saint of voodoo. Sometimes we get some weird goings-on in that cemetery on that night. More often a few nights before. People taking grave dirt, bones, and more.
That's pretty disgusting.
Yep. Don't know what they do with them, but it can't be pretty.
Vielleicht ja irgendwelche Rituale oder so.
What else can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I told you all I know about that.
Do you have any idea what Caprice sans cœur means?
No, can't say that I do.
Do you know anything about snakes?
Snakes? I see snakes around here all the time. Most of them ain't poisonous, of course.
Do you know anything about snakes?
I don't mind snakes myself, but lots of folks are afraid of them.
Do you know anything about snakes?
I don't mind.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
They say it was part of an old religion from Africa, brought here by slaves.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
I don't really care to talk about it. I don't do it none myself.
What do you know about the Voodoo Murders?
Ain't it just awful, them finding those bodies with voodoo things around them? I don't think there's any real voodoo going on. Somebody's trying to cover their tracks is all.
What do you know about the Voodoo Murders?
I told you all I know about that.
Have you ever heard the word Schottenjäger?
I don't know what you talking about.
Na gut, ich glaube, wir haben alles. Dann gehe ich mal woanders hin. Wir haben noch so viel anzugucken in der Stadt.
Welcome, Seeker. You must be the one Dr. John called me about.
I guess so. My name is...
Wait, Gabriel Knight?
You're too quick for me.
Actually, Dr. John told me. You have come to the right place, Mr. Knight. Tell me how I can help.
Tja, aber wie es weitergeht, das seht ihr erst in der nächsten Folge. Ich bedanke mich fürs Zuschauen. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschö, bitte.